So yesterday I made a video talking about whether or not you should be summoning on the most recent Guda like raid up that's rotating all of the previous Guda servants over on the NA side of things. And one of the servants that I think I maybe underestimated or lowballed a little bit was Okita, because I absolutely adore using Okita. I think she's a lot of fun, but I also acknowledge that she's not as strong as I guess she used to be, right? Like, she's been power crept by other single target servants, but at the same time, she's still effective. You can get the job done with her, as I'll be showing in the background of this video, where it may sound like a tall order to try to beat some of these bosses in only 3 turns. You might think, oh, that's really hard to do. You know, I don't have enough time to beat a boss in 3 turns. But as you can see with an NP1 Okita, she's pretty effectively able to take these guys out. And sure, the RNG was fairly decent, getting, 1 or 2 of Okita's cards every single turn, but it still shows that it's like not that ridiculous to do. And the crits she's able to get out there to also just kind of beat down the boss are rather impressive. At least for a servant that doesn't have like these insane crit skills where on some Super Orion nonsense where they're giving themselves just, loads of crit buffs on crit buffs on crit buffs, right? She's an older servant. She's got ways to build that up, and then they've gave that to her on her 2nd and 3rd skill as well. So she can definitely get some pretty decent numbers going, but definitely not as nutty as some more recent servants that have come out. And I guess I just wanted to do this video kind of highlighting her, giving her a little bit of a spotlight, because she is a servant that I break out fairly often because she's very fun to use. I liken it very much to playing a pet deck in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Where I might understand that it's not the greatest deck of all time, but you can still be rather effective. You can still break it out there and go get some dubs. That's how I kind of view Okita. So we're just going to talk about her in this video. Just, again, something that I just wanted to go ahead and talk about. So without further ado, let's just start diving into this. Now, one of the things, if you're talking about more meta servants that you might, kind of recognize with Okita and realize that she is suffering from, is just that her buffs do fall off rather quickly. Most of the things that she has only last for 1 turn. And like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you do want to be finishing these fights in, 3 turns. And the reason for that is in your quick setups, especially because of kinda how Scotty functions, you really need to finish the fight before all the buffs wear off. Because once the buffs wear off, it's not like Castoria and Merlin or Proto Merlin where you have these supremely powerful NPs that can kind of carry you until your buffs come back up. Once, say, you're using someone like a Quetzalcoatl, an Ozymandias, just some single target buster servant, or even an AoE, that once their buffs wear off, at least Merlin could theoretically carry you for the next couple of turns until your buffs come back. With the illusion skill and the fact that you're healing every single turn, you're also regenerating NP back because of his own NP, or with Castoria, with the solemn defense that you're probably going to have a couple hits of, you're pretty safe as long as the boss is just not going to yoink all of your buffs. Sure, the Castoria can be a little bit, I guess, susceptible if you want to view it that way, because she doesn't give you sustainability, she gives you survivability, but again, in general, it's enough to get you back to where your buffs are coming back. Scotty has something like that with the dodge on her NP, but the problem is that since you're doing quick chains and you're not really doing arch chains with your quick teams, because, the NPs are quick, you're not really refunding and getting Scotty's NP very consistently, right? So there's not really a way for you to effectively get to where your skills are going to come back, especially because you want all of your skills to come back from all of your guys. And you may say, well, ZTL, isn't that like a problem for buster servants as well? And it would be, but the Merlins both give each other NP if you're using a double Merlin strategy, especially now with the 2nd skill giving 10% to the entire party, and the fact that he also just refunds 5% NP every single turn because he has the Incubus passive. So they don't even have to worry about you firing those arch cards or something they already thought of that they just didn't give to Scotty. So you may be saying, well, if Okita only has these 1-turn buffs, isn't she going to fall off rather hard? And you'll actually notice during the Kiara portion of the gameplay that I think actually just finished like a last minute ago or something like that, because it was pretty shorter than I thought it was going to be. Most Kiara runs are generally like 6 to 8 minutes whenever I use them for the background, but no, that one was like 3.5 minutes, and I wasn't even particularly rushing to go as fast as I could. And you'll notice that she does more and more damage every single turn because she continues to lower the enemy's defense. So even though she's losing the really large quick buff, because her NP just continually lowers the enemy's defense, she's stacking damage every single turn and making it easier and easier to take out the enemy. And that's also to just not forget about the fact that she's doing these insane crits in the background. So where it might seem like it's a weakness, yes, technically it is. We would prefer her to have those 3-turn buffs because then she would still maintain her level of damage damage and build up on it, instead of, say, the defense downs functioning as more of a band-aid solution that, well, even though she loses, say, the quick buff, she at least has another way to kind of stack damage on the enemy, aside from, say, stacking attack buffs. But it still ends up being fine for her, right? Like, it still ends up being rather effective. And even though I didn't really get to showcase it in the initial gameplay, her second skill now having a battery is something that I kind of find really funny, because it can be very nice if you want to use her in, say, like a multi-core scenario, right? You need her to take out a really large enemy in like a 90+ node, right? You have a really well-built Okita, because, well, she doesn't have power mods. If you have an NP5 servant and God forbid that they have like event power mod bonus, they're going to probably drop one of those large single target enemies. Maybe not one of the 1.1 million HP guys, especially if they're at like NP1 or something, but I know there's probably some crazy people that went for NP5 Okita and have like fully decked her out. And so if you want to use her for those methods, you know, they gave her the tiny battery over there. But if you're using her for these boss scenarios, if you've ever used Okita, you're just watching in the background, the refund she gets on her quick and art cards is pretty insane. Her NP refund is just ridiculous. She pretty much just like full refunds her entire battery, which I just find absolutely hilarious that they were like, you know what, this servant needs an additional battery, which again, would be nice if, say, we got really unlucky with the card RNG, it might have come up, but dude, we didn't even use one of our Scotty's batteries on Okita because she was just chugging away by refunding the entirety of her battery. Which is why, again, I use that kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh analogy at the very beginning of this, where like it might be a very simple deck that you're using, but sometimes simplicity is king, right? You just want to log in, whip out a servant that's really easy to use, you don't really have to think about, and you know can get the job done. Sure, does she not have all the bells and whistles that someone like Izumo or, God forbid, the new Dantes that they got over on JP this year have? I mean, yeah, no, she doesn't have all of those, and they're certainly better units than she is. But that doesn't mean that she's bad, right? FGO is built in this way that you can kind of use whatever you servants you want generally to kind of get by and play the game. Obviously, there's stuff like the Buster meta that kind of gatekeeps a lot of servants that it's like, oh, you don't have this specific battery. Well, I guess you're not getting in the club then, little buddy. But when it comes to single target servants, again, you can just generally use whoever you want to go beat down some of these bosses. I mean, you truly do have to be quite the mid servant, well, not even mid, but just absolute butt cheeks bad, like Angra mine you, for you to not really get any playtime in some of these boss fights. And even then, I'm sure there are people that are dedicated to specifically using Angra mine you to beat some of these tough bosses. So again, I kind of just wanted to do a little bit of, you know, not ranting, but I guess praise posting over here for Okita, because I really like her a lot. She's one of the reasons I got into FGO and stuck around. And I was reflecting on the video that I did yesterday that even though, you know, was received rather positively, I was like, man, I kind of feel like I just didn't give Okita enough credit, because again, not the craziest servant ever, but you don't have to be the craziest servant ever to see some play and to be pretty decent going into this game, because again, it's not super complex. You can make things really complex with these, you know, servants that have 75 different effects on each of their skills and have like 3 or 4 mechanics and, you know, ways to ramp up their damage, or you can just use a very simple servant that can just poke the enemy to death and just call it a day from there. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. If you guys enjoyed the video, you know, I would appreciate a like on it, maybe a little subscription to the channel, as even though FGO is a little bit slow right now, with us kind of already getting all the goodies from the current event over on NA and JP, we're still waiting for the next couple of days until we get the second part of Ordeal Call 3, which I don't know why we have a 50-day long event over there, but even if they do that, if Lasengo makes things really, really slow, your boy will find something to talk about or something to rant and rave about when it comes to FGO, as I have dedicated myself to the mission of doing a daily video on FGO every single day that I only miss out on whenever I forget to hit upload. So hopefully I don't forget to hit upload on this one. And on that note, you know, on that positive note of not forgetting to upload the video, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice one, and I guess leave your thoughts on Okita in the comments down below.